Welcome to Obey Your Strengths with Gallup Certified Strengths Coach and self-proclaimed Strengths Geek, Kersten.
Hi there, Strengths fans. Welcome back to another episode of Obey Your Strengths. Today, my guest is Natalie King. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad you're here. Natalie is a program manager in the hardware engineering department at Facebook, and her and I have been Strengths pals for several years now, and I invited Natalie on to tell us about her strengths journey, about her unique top 5 as well, and then she's just got some really great anecdotes that I think we could all learn from and be inspired by. So Natalie, thanks so much for joining me today. Tell us, what are your top 5?
Thanks for having me, Kathy. So my top 5 strengths, I've taken the test multiple times because of the companies that I work with, but the ones that I have today that are, again, very little change here, but developer, positivity, empathy, arranger, and individualization.
The combination of all the feels.
All the feels. I think, so my nickname at the last company I was at, they used to call me Basket Full of Kittens because that's what my strengths embodied.
I did not know that. And I love that because that is the feeling I get whenever I'm around you is basket full of kittens for sure. What are some of the other strengths that you've had in your top 5 that might give us, clues to what are now in your top 10? But what other strengths have you seen come up through the times of taking it?
Sure. So the top 10 has really stayed the same every single time. The order changes. I think I've gotten older and wiser, but I also have woo, includer. Man, I don't remember the other ones top of mind, but those are the ones that really kind of fluctuate the most up and down the list. So again, all the people.
Yeah, what we need to know is that you are a people person. Do you have, so this has just occurred to me, do you have relator somewhere up there?
I think it's in my top 10, yeah.
Okay, gosh, think about that, Natalie. Woo and relator and developer and individualization. Like, you just love people. Tell me about one of your, let's talk about your current top 5 developer positivity, which I've had developers and positivity on this podcast before. I think you might be the first empathy. I think. So I really want to dig into that one, as well as individualization. I've had several folks with individualization, but tell me a little bit about maybe what's your favorite thing about each of your top 5?
Oh, man. So one of my favorite things about empathy is the one that I think I have the most pride in now of having. I don't think I didn't always feel that way about empathy as in my top 5, but today it's like my favorite strength. And I really love the fact that I can make people feel comfortable sharing and just being themselves. And I can understand what they're going through in that moment. Arranger is the next one that I lean on a ton and I love. I'm an information hoarder. And I love to collect information, whether it's books, articles, links that I save on my Google Chrome. So just kind of moving those pieces around and kind of holding on to it for when I need it. Positivity. I don't know. I just think I really appreciate the glass half full attitude. And I think others feel the same way, hopefully. Developer. It's really interesting that developer and individualization are there because developer, it's, spending time with you, Kathy, I've learned it's all about how to help people identify how do they use their strengths and how do they succeed. And in individualization, it's like, again, looking at like 100 people and being like, okay, here's the one thing that makes you really special.
And I've seen you time and time again step in to a relationship as a coach in that way, using your developer positivity to encourage those folks to leverage their individualization, like, the thing that you see about them, which I have totally appreciated because you can recognize people's specialness. And then here comes that developer positivity that cheerleads and as well as pushes sometimes, maybe even against their will, Natalie.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think I'm like a hype woman, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So, and I think we have lots of stories to share about how you are swimming in a sea of analytical restorative, being in the hardware engineering team, and you bring such diverse strengths to your role as program manager. And I want to hear more about it. So actually, tell me, how do those strengths that you just described help you be successful as a program manager with an engineering department?
Sure. So my role, I'm so honored to support this team of innovative, hardworking engineers. They are responsible for designing the next generation of hardware that goes in our data centers. They support all of Facebook's applications and services. So a lot of pressure to be able to support all of your dog and kindergarten graduation videos and photos and all that kind of stuff. And I help them take care of all of the non-engineering things that happen in the background that make us successful. Things like communications, working with our HR recruiting partners, L&D, culture, diversity, events, kind of you name it. The interest, we talk about a lot that my team they're not the warm and fuzzy. Empathy is not there at all.
Definitely not woo, Natalie.
Definitely not woo. Engineers through and through. And, it's so fascinating that I think, okay, I feel so lucky to be around them. And at the same time, they're looking at me like, wait, you know how to go talk to people and get them to agree to things? Or, oh, I've been trying to share more about my work. How did you make this so easy? I get to help them tell their stories, get things done, all the things that they're like, my black and white brain cannot do.
Cannot even fathom how, it's maybe they could do it, but why would they ever want to, right? I mean, I think there's a huge level of appreciation for someone like you because they're the nicest. Let's just say that.
Oh, they're so nice.
They're the nicest engineers that I've ever worked with. But wow, you actually get jazzed about going and meeting cross-functional teams and people outside of our department. And,
and I think absolutely. And I think it's worth saying that people who are highly strategic and highly learners and analytical, it's not that they don't appreciate culture. They don't appreciate all these things that make the team special and successful. They just look at it and they're like, I want to help contribute towards that, but I don't know where to start, or I don't know all the work that it takes in order to do those things. Throwing a workshop to share your work. Most of them are like, okay, I just want to show up and just start talking about what I'm working on. And I'm like, okay, well, who's the audience? Do we need to set context? Let's make sure it's high level. Do we have the right, over virtual, in a virtual space? Do we have the event set up? Do we have, Zoom? And they're like, oh, okay. There's a lot more work that goes into just me showing up and talking about the cool stuff.
The clicker, right? Exactly.
Pushing the clicker, yeah.
Pushing the clicker.
Totally.
And even in that context, Natalie, which I've seen you operate in well, is that you will greet people. Many times they show up to them, and this is not against engineers, it's just showing how your uniqueness helps fill in the spaces to make it warm, to create belonging. I've seen you greeting people like good morning and smiling and engaging. And right now you're even nodding at me. And most of the time they're a little bit stoic because they're so much in their head with those strategic thinking themes. They're in their own mental processing and that emotional engagement, that physical presence, man, you just bring it loud and clear, Natalie. So I can see how you really help them engage with other folks. In the intro, you said, I wasn't as comfortable with my empathy, but now I am embracing it and it's my favorite. Tell me that story as a female in tech with empathy. Why were you uncomfortable with it in the early days?
Oh man. So, I started working, I wasn't quite on top of things. And so my first job, thank God, was, coming into this tech company at 21 and looking around, obviously men are the majority in our industry. And, before starting that role, I never knew what strengths were. And so it was one of those, I took my strengths test, I saw empathy, and I actually learned more about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, something clicked in me. I'm like, there was finally something for me to be able to like validate everything else that has happened before my life of, oh, that's just who I am. I'm not like, I'm sensitive. Like I'm usually the first to cry on any feel good commercial. Like I just thought that's like, I didn't know that there was an actual strength to call it that. And like, it was something that people valued. But, being in tech, I was looking to establish myself in my career, work really hard. And I thought it was such a weakness because I didn't see other people exemplifying empathy in the workspace. I saw all these other leaders who, disciplined, strategic, focus, futuristic, very visionary leaders. We do what we did when we were little kids. We copy. And so I'm like, okay, I want to be successful like them. So I tried to copy their style, and it didn't work for me at all. Like I would almost be angry at myself for how little emotion I would give other people. Cause I thought that's what was needed. Like I thought that's what I had to be in order to be successful in the environment that I was. And not to say that I worked with a bunch of, jerks who didn't care about anybody. That's just not what their style was. And I think over time you battle, you kind of figure it out and go, okay, this didn't work for me. You go in a different situation. You're like, okay, let me try something else. And it wasn't until I had a manager who happened to be a woman who, I started working with her, and she said, I really, appreciate your strength in empathy. And she was the one who gave me the nickname Basket Full of Kittens. And she used to use it like, it used to be one of those, like, we used to lead with empathy in these spaces. Anytime there was an org change or we knew something was going to happen in the business that people might react to, she used to say, hey, I want to talk the changes with you. You tell me, what do you think the team will feel? And it was like, that was like for me, like when everything kind of was like, oh, my empathy is actually really rare in this space. And why am I trying to like kind of put it in the closet? Let me go ahead and just use it. And I don't know, ever since then, it was just like, ever since that moment, it's become such like the biggest tool in my toolbox.
I can see that story in my visualization, Natalie, of you stepping into that and realizing that's the powerful partnership that you offer to anybody who wants it, right? I mean, that you can read emotion, you can feel tension. I don't know if I got this from Gallup or if this has just come from 15 years of doing strengths coaching, but I call people with empathy the team thermometer, right? Because you are picking up communication from way more than what people are just saying, right? I mean, give us a little peek, especially, I'm empathy number 34. Wah, wah, wah.
So we're great balance for each other.
We are very good balance. But I mean, I'm kind of looking at people like you and thinking to myself, like they've got some kind of magic, some kind of secret sauce. So tell me, what is it? Like, give me examples of things that you pick up on.
Before the pandemic, it was really easy to catch nonverbal body language in a meeting. We'd be in a room and I would see someone almost literally have a physical reaction to something. And I'm like, you kind of, at least I take note of that. I'm like, something about what was just said really kind of just affected them, whether it was positive or negative. Over VC, it's been a little bit harder, but I think, but also easier in a few ways, because we, in our culture anyways, most of us have our cameras on, we try to engage face to face to try to make it as normal as possible. Mm-hmm. And the people who, not to say that, it's not okay to have your video off. I think we've normalized it. Sometimes you just need to like turn your video off because there's kids,
there's background.
There's things happening behind you that you can't control. But the people who are constantly like camera off, don't say anything in meetings, don't show up to like social events, so like our virtual happy hours, people who are unwilling, like we don't hear from them very often. It's usually I'm like, okay, maybe something's going on. Check in if they're okay. If you, yeah, I just usually it's like now it's over chat. Like you try to you see things on over our chat, and I'm like, they're obviously not happy about this. I wonder why.
You're one of my poster children for empathy, I think, because I've seen you in action so often. I have other stories of empathy in my mind that perhaps listeners that have it might even this might resonate with them, but you are one of those people who are like, how are you? No, really, how are you? Because if you get the like, oh, good, no,
it's fine. We're good.
Yeah. And you dig deeper, don't you? When you can see it.
Yeah, I actually had a friend I was on. She video chat called me the other day, and we were working on something really big together, and it was the event happened this week actually, and we're like, okay, so these things need to happen. And I said, hey, how are you doing? And oh, fine. You feeling good? Yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? I was like, do you just want to, can we just take a pause? Like, I know we have a lot going on. And she's like, well, yeah, there's all these other things happening outside of this project, and I'm just not okay with it. And I just don't have time to there's no time because we have all these other deadlines. And I'm like, okay. And we talked it through, and it was like saying, okay, we're going to get through this stuff. And then we're going to have a pity party, and we're going to talk, we're going to let ourselves feel completely not okay about this other situation. And then when you're ready, we'll figure it out. And they were like, yeah, okay.
So what you did just there is just helped her process through great listening. You didn't fix it, but
No.
You just gave her a little bit of hope, right? I loved your positivity, giving her a little bit of hope, like we're going to get through it, but just giving people a moment to decompress. And Natalie, that's something that I seldom do, but it's something that I'm learning in my coaching practice. So while it comes naturally to you and feels super comfortable, for me, it's a little bit forced, but I have used this whole technique of let's make space at the beginning of the coaching conference or coaching call, because I don't know what you just got out of. I don't know what has happened to you since we last spoke. The world seems like it's on fire around us. So let's just take a moment to process. Let me tell you, I'm not doing that because it does anything for my strengths. I'm doing it because I'm trying to up my empathy game. So it's a skill. It's definitely not a talent. You do it so naturally and comfortably. Many times I think that whatever they tell me, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, okay, I don't know what to do next. Damn it. I wish that someone with empathy was here to tell me how to respond in this moment. But most of the time I find that silence is more valuable, or just the I hear you is more valuable than, if I'm at a loss. So I'm giving away a little bit of my secret sauce right now, but if I'm at a loss, I just say, I hear you. Right. And that is helpful. Is that a good tool, Miss Empathy?
I think so. Well, look, you just hit the nail on the head. The last 18 months in this world have been crazy. Pandemic, social injustice. I mean, there's so much change happening right now, and people are feeling so many emotions that I can't go fix those things. Even though the positivity in me is constantly trying to solution game the crap out of things, especially at work. Anytime there's there's a problem, I'm like, oh, we can do this or this. And I'm like, no. I have to tell them the positivity in me to no, calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Put the empathy hat on, and they're not coming to you to fix the problem. They're just coming to you to tell you the problem.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, because we can't fix everything.
No. And you have a new image. You have a new nickname. Your new nickname in your current team is Team Therapist, right? You're known for your listening skills and abilities.
I've got a few nicknames, and that is one of them. We're so relationship based, and it's, I'm sure some people, if they see one-on-ones on their calendar with no agenda, they're like, oh, what are we going to talk about? I love those meetings. And I have quite a few one-on-ones on the calendar every week. And it's just showing up of like, tell me what's on your mind. What do you need help with? Like, what are you struggling with? And now there's kind of like a rinse and repeat questions that I kind of go through, because usually someone's always struggling with something, or they want help with an idea that they have. And so I do spend a lot of time talking to people.
How does that fit within your program manager productivity? I mean, because I see you using it in a very productive way. It's not like team therapist is a fun way of, because you're so different from your peers, right? In this department. However, it's highly productive. So help me and help the listeners understand how you make connections around that listening, and helping dig things up, but then push it towards productivity.
Thank you for letting me validate that all I do. My mom thinks that all I do is talk to people, go to meetings, and talk to more people. But a lot of the one-on-ones and the discussions I have with people, it leads to, oh, well, I know that there's another initiative happening. Let me connect you to so-and-so. I think that y'all's work together could actually make a better product. And so I do talk a lot all day, but it is, I feel like my role, and I think probably what helps us be more productive is we're able to fast track some of that feeling of people being stuck and not know where to begin. Because if I can connect you to someone else who's already working on something similar, great. If this is a brand new idea and it's a great idea to action on immediately, okay, let's talk through, and I help them. Okay, here's the first 5 things you need to go do. Mm-hmm. Then I can help you do the next 5. And we start outlining out what does it look like. And so it does lead to a lot of productivity across our team. And we're hiring so fast and so much that we do have to scale a lot of what we're working on to meet the need of the team.
I see you saying this a lot, this quote of, well, have you talked to them? Or you should go talk to so-and-so, right? And that there's some kind of magic and connection in your head, because even when you've told me, oh, you should talk to someone, and then I don't even see the connection yet, but I trust the Natalie magic.
Yeah.
I'm going to go talk to that person because something in Natalie's mind was triggered so that's how you keep your empathy out of drama too, right? Because you don't tell me all the details of why I need to go talk to a female engineer, right? That's working on her career development path, right? You don't tell me the details. You just say, hey, go talk to this person. And then magic happens. And I've learned to trust that strength in you, Natalie.
Oh, thank you.
It's very good. You talked about people partnering with you for your empathy. Natalie, what kind of partners do you need in your life living within this super strong relationship realm? Who do you lean on to be more efficient and productive?
Oh my gosh. My team balances me out so perfectly. And the other PM on my team, she is like the yin to my yang with strategic and focus, and futuristic, and all the like execution strengths. And she's got this really great gift of being able to like step back and just document everything, and it all like, and think of the plan to automate it. For being a program manager, they're like, okay, we need a project plan. I'm like, okay, I can do that. Sure. And that's where my strengths probably, hinder me the most. Of it's all in my head, in my heart, mm-hmm. sometimes too. Mm-hmm. That telling people, like being able to tell them, well, here's why I'm doing all these things. And thankfully I have great partners like you, Kathy, where you're like, I trust whatever you're telling me has a really good end game to it. And so I sometimes need help from folks with those strengths who can help me pull everything out of my head and create some of that business value. Not, just to help other people understand where my empathy and positivity and developer are coming from.
Yeah, I can see that because I know your partner. I can see how that's a beautiful blend of she's helping you see that big picture and get it all out of that heart and head space. Oh, that's great. You're working in a really, and maybe this is true, it's just making a connection how you said, I appreciate that you trust this ability in me, but maybe that's because we've worked in high performing cultures, and we haven't mentioned it, but you and I met at Rackspace, which is a high performing culture. You're currently at a high performing culture. I mean, it's markers of a high performing culture mean that people are getting things done and people are staying cutting edge on their expertise, and there is a high level of expectation and commitment among the culture so that we are self-regulating towards high performance. And we tend to, Natalie, I tend to just trust people in a high performing culture because I'm thinking, if you're not high performing, you're not going to be here. That sounds harsh. Gosh, did that hurt your empathy?
No.
That's why maximizer coming out of aren't we all just able, in some ways, if we find the way to be successful, we're going to survive in this culture. And it's a little bit cutthroat at times, but at the most, I mean, it's usually just feeling like we are performing at a really high capacity and we expect everybody else's too. I guess I want to transition that into something that you and I have shared a common denominator around, and a common experience of being in those high performing cultures with lots of experts from different areas of industry, of expertise. Gosh. And then we might feel like early on in our careers, we both joined high performing cultures in our early 20s, that we didn't belong there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I want to be very clear that, I feel like being in a high performing culture and team, starting at Rackspace, I'm like, I'm going to hit 10 years in my professional career next year, which doesn't feel like, it's not a lot, but in the companies that I've worked for, it feels like 30. And it feels like a totally different lifetime. These are dog years that I'm measuring here at this point. Right. And you're right. We work with a bunch of really smart people. And for me, I'm probably one of the few people on my team that has just a bachelor's degree, which I know education means nothing in this time of age. But I usually show up and I'm one of the younger people in the room. Everyone's got like these PhDs in like physics, and I'm usually
laser optics, something I've never heard of. Well, they're rocket scientists.
Exactly. And the things that my team are working on, they're literally, they talk a lot about, the end of Moore's law and, how they're building hardware past, the point of what physics can prove right now. And my tiny little brain over here with my degree in communications from the wonderful school of UTSA is going, excuse me, what? I'm just like nodding and smiling, and I just kind of fake it till I make it. And, one of the things that I love is and this is probably something that you could tell me is part of my strengths here, but I'm usually the first one to jump in and say, hey, communications major over here, I didn't understand any of that. Can we back up and can you explain this like you're going to talk to like a third grader? And I've actually learned, because everyone on my team is so smart and they all have their certain subject matter expertise in, I'm the first one to ask the question, but then usually someone will message me or look at me and go, thank you. Because I didn't understand that either. And I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness.
That's go first vulnerability, Natalie. So I don't think it has anything to do with your strengths. I think it has something to do with your leadership capacity, right? That we know this. There's a ton of us. If you pay attention on LinkedIn, you'll see imposter syndrome articles written almost daily. You will see people. I know lots of folks come to me in coaching and ask about imposter syndrome, and I have it too. particularly with working with your group. Because when you're working with experts, PhD level experts, you start to think, gosh, what do I have to provide in this conversation? And that is I loved what that technique you just shared with us of this, help me understand and kind of showing your cards. That requires vulnerability, and it requires so a little bit of bravery, right? That goes hand in hand, vulnerability and bravery, if you're going to show it.
And you do this too, Kathy. You're like the first one to when you facilitate a session with us. My name's Kathy. I'm just this wonderful Texas girl in Blanco, Texas right now. I love strengths. I could talk to you about strengths data all day long.
Yeah. I have no idea how you're building a chip that's like smaller than my fingernail. But yeah, I don't understand your world, but I want to. So maybe there's a little bit of, that is true. Lead with some vulnerability, and then you don't have to know it all, right? Maybe that is strengths-based in the way that you just own, I guess, your lack of, I wouldn't say strength. So when I say strengths, I'm thinking about talent, right?
Yeah.
But even owning some of your own lack of knowledge in an area is freeing in some way when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Totally. And then, I kind of went on a tangent there, but I do want to come back to imposter syndrome because I feel like when I was younger, early 20s, in this really high performing, work environment, I felt when I first started feeling imposter syndrome, the only thing I knew back then that could work was double down, work harder, and outproduce my imposter syndrome. And I think that's what, all of us did, honestly, is we just tried to outpace the feeling of feeling inadequate. And I was like, okay, these extra hours, these extra projects, it's going to balance it out and I'm going to feel great. And some of that was like, I feel like, that only just dug us into the hole further. Like we ended up being burned out, tired, almost bitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like today, my feelings of imposter syndrome, I feel it like, Kathy and I were talking about this, but I'm due for some time off. I'm, like a lot of people in the pandemic, there was nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. So I didn't take time off, and I was starting to feel burned out. And when I'm starting to feel that way, my imposter syndrome just spikes through the roof. It's like coming in hotter than, the Texas heat wave over here, right, where I feel like, oh, well, what I'm doing isn't so impactful. I feel like I just went to a bunch of meetings today and nothing got done. What I'm doing isn't even important. And usually, I caught myself thinking those things last week, and I had to physically say those things out loud to understand how stupid they were. Because I feel like your brain just starts telling these stories, and you're like, wait, maybe? I don't know. And I know that's not true. I know the team values what I do. I know that the work that I'm doing is impactful, but none of us are logical when we're in that feeling of imposter syndrome and burnout and we need a break. So I think, again, maybe it's because I'm older, or maybe I've just learned to just accept my strengths. It's okay, you need some time off. Yeah. Take a few days off, unplug. Don't take on more empathy, empty your cup. Don't take on anything. Go read, go garden, go disconnect from the world in the way that you need it. That's how I tackle my imposter syndrome now, which is way different than what I used to do.
So this is a beautiful moment. I want to recap what you just said and how I'm feeling it. This is the wisdom of working with someone with a ton of relationship and empathy strengths, is that you've learned that rather that self-talk, right, which is where the imposter syndrome is coming from. It's the negative self-talk. It's not those thoughts are not the truth. They are an indicator of stress. And when you have stress, you don't need to believe the thoughts. You need to feed yourself. You need to take time off. You need to question, like, why am I so stressed right now? And how can I manage the stress? What a beautiful lesson right here, Natalie, that we can pay forward to people who are, earlier in their careers than us, or maybe even beyond and still haven't felt it. Because I'll say that I'm not sure. I don't know when I'm feeling stressed, right? I get lost in the swirl. And so when I'm in really tough, busy times in my life, stress shows up usually as like in my stomach, and I'll have stomach issues, like heartburn. Yeah. That's my number one thing. Heartburn. I actually went to the doctor when I was 24, getting married. And I was like, gosh, I have heartburn every night. And he's like, tell me about your life. And I was thinking, why? Because aren't you going to tell me to stop drinking coffee and start taking Prilosec? I was expecting to have that conversation. Like, can I get a prescription strength Prilosec? Yeah. And he's like, what are you tell me what's going on right now. I'm like, well, I'm planning a wedding, and I just moved, and I'm doing, I got a new job, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm telling all these things. And he's like, well, that's why you have heartburn. And I'm like, what does that have to do with heartburn? It's stress. So what you're telling us. So yeah, there's physical and mental, right? And physical heartburn would be physical, but imposter syndrome, or just those self-negative that tear you down, make you feel like you're not as effective, efficient, or talented, or valued that you should be, or that you know to be true, could be signs of stress.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That's really good. That's really good. It is really good. I know that imposter syndrome for a lot of us also dissipates when we voice it and we hear that others experience it too. You and I are living that out right now because we've exposed it to each other. Like, I feel like an imposter here, and you help me see, no. Let me tell you how you're valuable to us. And I can say that same thing to you. Let me tell you how you're valuable in this moment with your strength set, and why we need to hear from you. Right. And so finding yourself an imposter syndrome buddy to help you see through that. Lots of folks feel this. Men and women feel imposter syndrome.
100%. And I feel like I go back to that moment where I took strengths for the first time, and all of a sudden, all the reasons and feelings I had just clicked. And I was like, oh, this is who I am. Totally. And I feel like the second that you do just laid your strengths cards on the table, so to speak, and you just lead with that, your imposter syndrome, it is much easier to manage because you've already put out who you are. And I think that leads into a whole different conversation of showing up authentically, because it's not like you were trying to pretend to be something you weren't. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate, the work that you've done with our team, because now it's a common language. I can just say, hey, my positivity is feeling really low today. And I can just say that up front. And so people don't, the rest of the time we're together, they're like, something's off with Natalie.
Right. And they know what it is. And it doesn't have to be, and it can be, and it's said in a positive way. Sorry to use the word positive in this situation, but I think so much of it, if you don't have a language to say what's really going on, I have to apologize for my maximizer, Natalie, often saying, gosh, this is my maximizer talking, but what if we just made this one little tweak and we could really get to excellence here in this one little area, or I'm still not satisfied with how this looks, or here's a different idea. And then most of the time, and I'm sorry that my maximizer just made your good work feel like it was less than, yeah. No, and no, that's the feedback I wanted. Okay, great. I want your maximizer feedback. Otherwise I wouldn't bring these things to you. And I'm like, great.
Well, and it gives us, not only does it let us be more authentic, but I think there's a level of people, I've always been around teams where you just assume good intent. And I feel like leading with your strengths in those moments just reinforces that I'm coming with good intent. Kathy's not intending to completely, sideswipe all the work you've just done.
Right.
And she's telling you that. So I think it just doubles down on that. Like, I'm coming to you with good intent. I care about you. I want you to succeed. And it's much easier to collaborate with other people when you're in that environment.
Totally. If you think about all of the strengths in your top 5, and you can include your woo and other strengths that maybe have popped up into the top 5 over the years, but if there's one of the strengths that you have to obey, which one is it and why?
Okay, we haven't actually talked about my Ranger a ton. And this is actually the strength that just shines in the right moment. And I have to obey it when it does click into place. So the other nickname that my team gave me is Chaos Coordinator. And again, this is something that I learned over time that I didn't think it was a strength, but in moments where there's, 100 plates in the air, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, maybe this makes me really strange and odd, but that is the moment where I'm more centered and I actually feel more zen, is when all of the chaos is happening. And I'm not saying I can save lives or defuse bombs for a living, because that's definitely not what I'm saying. Like, that's definitely not my calling in life. But I think there's something about my Ranger strength that just puts me in a place of total calm in those moments where we need something. Again, we work in high performing teams and companies, and so things are moving fast. We need to pivot on a dime to support something. I remember about 6 months being at Facebook, and I was helping the team with a huge conference. And this is like one of the, any event organizer's dream. There's media, there's a whole expo hall with booths, and we're showing off hardware. And people on my team were really stressed. It was thousands of people. We were making a ton of presentations, tons of moving parts, lots of very expensive, one-of-a-kind hardware pieces that were in our booth. And I have to find the picture for you, Kathy, but it's like, I'm standing in this booth with hundreds of people in it. And I look just so happy, and I'm just, smiling, and I'm like, okay, what do you need? All right, what's the next problem? Tell me. Oh, you, someone's laptop, completely fried out. Oh, I have to give my presentation in 10 minutes. Oh, here's my laptop. I have your presentation on a thumb drive already. Here you go. And they're like, whoa.
You're in flow. It's in flow.
Things just feel like they move slower for me. And it's just, you're right. It's a flow. It just feels so natural and easy. And when the chaos is all over, I go, oh, that was nice.
And meanwhile, everybody's looking at you in awe of how is she doing that? See, what a beautiful story to end our podcast today with, Natalie. Thank you, because now I have a totally new appreciation for a Ranger in that story. A Ranger is one of those things, because I see it often, right? It's probably in the top 10 of the 24 million people who take it. And sometimes they lose their shine. It's Achiever. I love Achiever, but it's lost its shine a little bit with Ranger. And now I have another, look, I'm making my little heart. I'm making the heart, the heart shape to Natalie. That's so beautiful. A Ranger in its flow is at zen with many spinning plates. I have a new appreciation. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.
Thank you for joining me today. And I can't wait to work with you again.
Thank you for listening to Obey Your Strengths. To learn more about Kathy or hire her for your company or private coaching, visit obeyyourstrengths.com. You can also find her on Instagram at kathy.kersten. Obey Your Strengths is produced by Kersten Consulting, LLC, in association with Gameday Media out of San Antonio, Texas.